August 23rd, 1993. The phone rang at Neverland Ranch at exactly 11:47 p.m. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, sat alone in his private theater, watching the news destroy his life in real time. Every channel showed the same devastating headlines. Michael Jackson under investigation, shocking allegations, rock pop world, the fall of the king of pop. The remote control slipped from his trembling hands as another breaking news alert flashed across the screen. His world, carefully constructed over decades of unprecedented success, was crumbling in a matter of hours. But when Michael heard the voice on the other end of that late-night call, everything changed. Because the man calling wasn't just anyone. It was Muhammad Ali, the greatest. A man who knew exactly what it felt like when America turned its back on its heroes. "Champ," Ali said, his voice steady despite the early signs of Parkinson's disease that had begun affecting his speech. "I know this pain. Let me help you." What happened next would become one of the most powerful moments in entertainment in sports history. A story of courage, brotherhood, and how two of America's greatest icons stood together when the world tried to tear them apart. To understand why Muhammad Ali's defense of Michael Jackson was so extraordinary, you have to understand what Ali himself had endured 26 years earlier. It was April 28th, 1967, when 25-year-old Cassius Clay, now Muhammad Ali, walked into the Army Induction Center in Houston, Texas. When his name was called for military service, Ali took a step that would cost him everything. He refused to step forward. "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong," Ali had declared months earlier. "No Viet Cong ever called me nigger." The reaction was swift and devastating. Within hours, Ali was stripped of his heavyweight title. His boxing license was revoked in every state. He was banned from fighting for 3.5 years, the prime of his athletic career. Death threats poured in. Former fans burned his photos in the streets. "I lost everything," Ali would later recall. "My title, my income, my freedom to do what I loved. But I kept my soul." The parallels to Michael's situation in 1993 were impossible to ignore. Both men had reached the absolute pinnacle of their fields. Both were global superstars who transcended their industries, and both found themselves suddenly cast as villains by the very society that had once celebrated them. As the allegations against Michael dominated every news cycle, Ali watched the coverage with a heavy heart. He saw something familiar in the coordinated assault on Michael's character. The same systematic destruction he had experienced when he chose conscience over conformity. But there was something else Ali recognized in Michael's situation: the profound loneliness that comes when the whole world seems to turn against you at once. Ali remembered his own darkest nights during the boxing ban, when he would sit in his Chicago apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. The phone would ring with death threats. Former friends would cross the street to avoid him. Even some of his own family members questioned his decision. The financial pressure was crushing. Legal bills mounted while income disappeared entirely. His mother would call, worried about his safety, begging him to reconsider. "Maybe you could just apologize," she would whisper. "Maybe they would take you back." But Ali knew that some things were worth more than titles and money and public approval. He knew that a man's integrity was the one thing that could never be taken from him, only given away. During those 3.5 years of exile, Ali learned something profound about the nature of persecution. It doesn't just attack your reputation, it attacks your soul. Every morning he had to make a conscious choice to believe in himself when the entire world was telling him he was wrong. That's why, on that August night in 1993, Ali picked up the phone. He had been watching the coverage for weeks, seeing the same patterns he remembered from his own darkest period. The way former allies suddenly became silent. The way the media painted every action in the worst possible light. The way public opinion shifted from adoration to condemnation seemingly overnight. Ali knew that Michael needed to hear from someone who had survived this particular kind of hell. "Michael," Ali continued on that phone call, "I've been where you are. I know what it feels like when the whole country decides you're the enemy. But I also know something else. This isn't the end of your story unless you let it be." Michael listened in silence, tears streaming down his face as Ali spoke. For the first time since the allegations surfaced, Someone was talking to him not as a defendant or a celebrity, but as a human being who was hurting. 3 weeks later, on October 15th, 1993, Muhammad Ali drove through the gates of Neverland Ranch unannounced. He found Michael sitting alone by the lake, staring into the water as if searching for answers that wouldn't come. "You didn't have to come," Michael said quietly, not looking up. "Yes, I did," Ali replied, settling down beside him on the wooden dock. "Because 26 years ago, I was sitting just like this, wondering if my life was over." For the next 3 hours, two of the world's most famous men talked like old friends, sharing their deepest fears. Ali spoke about the lonely nights during his boxing ban, when even his closest supporters began to doubt him. He described the suffocating feeling of being labeled a traitor in the country he loved, the weight of carrying an entire movement's hopes while being personally destroyed by the establishment. Michael opened up about his own anguish, how the allegations had turned his sanctuary into a prison, how every child's laugh now made him self-conscious, how the very thing he loved most, working with children, had become his greatest vulnerability. As they sat by the water, Ali shared stories Michael had never heard before. How he used to practice his speeches in the mirror, preparing for the interviews where reporters would try to trap him with hostile questions. How he would lie awake at night, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing that his words could inspire or discourage millions of people who looked to him for strength. Michael, in turn, spoke about the burden of perfection, how every song, every dance move, every public appearance had to be flawless because the world was always watching, always judging. "They're trying to break your spirit," Ali said, his words carrying the wisdom of someone who had been through the fire and emerged transformed. "The same way they tried to break mine. But here's what I learned. They can take your titles, your money, your reputation, but they can't take who you really are unless you let them." Ali shared something that night that he had never told anyone else. During the darkest period of his exile from boxing, he had contemplated suicide, not because of the financial losses or even the public humiliation, but because he felt like he had lost his purpose in life. "But then I realized," Ali continued, his voice growing stronger as he spoke, "that sometimes God puts us through the fire not to destroy us, but to forge us into something stronger. Your music, your art, your love for children, that's your truth. Don't let them take that from you." As the California sun began to set behind them, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Ali made Michael a promise that would change everything. "I'm going to do something for you that nobody did for me when I needed it most. I'm going to speak up publicly, and I don't care who doesn't like it." November 8th, 1993. CNN's Larry King Live had booked Muhammad Ali for what was supposed to be a routine interview about his upcoming biography. The producers expected a typical celebrity appearance, some anecdotes about boxing, maybe a few stories about his fighting days. Definitely nothing controversial. But when Larry King asked about the Michael Jackson controversy, expecting the typical celebrity non-answer or deflection, Ali stunned the television world and kept the promise he had made to Michael that evening by the lake. "I know Michael Jackson's heart," Ali said, looking directly into the camera with the same intensity he once brought to staring down opponents before a fight. "He loves children the way I love humanity, purely protectively, without any hidden agenda." The CNN studio fell silent. In that era, celebrities rarely spoke out on controversial topics, especially ones involving such serious allegations. Public relations teams across Hollywood had trained their clients to stay neutral, to avoid taking sides, to protect their own brands above all else. But Ali wasn't finished, and he certainly wasn't backing down. "I've seen this before," he continued, his voice gaining strength despite the Parkinson's disease that was beginning to affect his speech patterns. "When I stood against the Vietnam War, they called me a traitor. They said I hated America, that I was ungrateful for everything this country had given me. But I loved America so much that I was willing to sacrifice everything to help it become better. Michael Jackson loves children so much that he's dedicated his life to making theirs better. And now they're trying to destroy him for it." Larry King tried to move the conversation to safer topics, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the interview was taking. But Ali held up his hand with the authority that had once intimidated heavyweight champions and commanded the attention of world leaders. "Let me finish," he said, And something in his tone made it clear that this wasn't a request, it was a demand. America has a history of attacking its greatest before learning to appreciate them. They attacked Martin Luther King when he spoke about civil rights. They attacked me when I spoke about war. Now they're attacking Michael when he speaks about healing children. But truth has a way of rising to the surface, and when it does, history will remember who stood with it and who ran from it. The impact was immediate and seismic. Ali's words, coming from perhaps the most respected athlete in American history, a man who had paid the ultimate price for his principles and been vindicated by history, shifted the entire conversation. For the first time since the allegations emerged, a major public figure had not only defended Michael, but had done so with such moral clarity and personal vulnerability that it was impossible to dismiss as publicity-seeking or celebrity loyalty. Within 24 hours of Ali's CNN appearance, something remarkable began to happen. Other celebrities who had remained silent, afraid to associate themselves with the controversy, started finding their voices. James Brown, the godfather of soul, called a press conference the next day. If Muhammad Ali says Michael Jackson is good people, that's enough for me. The Godfather stands with the greatest, and the greatest stands with the king of pop. Quincy Jones, who had worked with Michael on Thriller and Off the Wall, but had remained diplomatically silent since the allegations surfaced, broke his silence. Muhammad Ali spoke what we all felt but were afraid to say. Michael Jackson is one of the most gentle souls I've ever known, and his love for children comes from the purest place. Diana Ross, who had mentored Michael since he was a child with the Jackson 5, issued a statement that was read on every major news program. Muhammad Ali reminded us all that courage isn't just about facing opponents in a ring, it's about standing up for truth when it's unpopular. I've known Michael Jackson since he was 10 years old, and his character hasn't changed. He's still the same caring, gentle person who always put children first. Even more significantly, the media coverage began to shift. Ali's intervention had done something that no PR firm or legal strategy could accomplish. It had reframed the narrative from one of guilt or innocence to one of character and truth. News outlets began running retrospectives on Ali's own persecution and drawing parallels to Michael's situation. Editorial writers started questioning whether the rush to judgment in the media was fair or appropriate. The conversation moved from, is Michael Jackson guilty, to are we repeating the same mistakes we made with Muhammad Ali? December 10, 1995. Nearly 2 years had passed since that pivotal CNN interview, and Michael Jackson was preparing for his comeback performance on HBO's One Night Only concert when he received an unexpected visitor backstage at the Beacon Theater in New York. Muhammad Ali, moving more slowly now, but with the same unmistakable presence that had commanded respect in boxing rings around the world, approached Michael's dressing room. In his hands was a small velvet box that would contain one of the most meaningful gifts in entertainment history. I wanted to give you something, Ali said, opening the box to reveal a custom-made white sequined glove, similar to Michael's famous one, but with something special embroidered inside the wrist in gold thread. The inscription read, "From one champion to another, keep fighting the good fight." Michael's eyes filled with tears as he slipped on the glove. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for his hand, which of course, it had been. "You don't understand what you did for me," Michael said, his voice breaking with emotion. "When you spoke out on CNN, you didn't just defend me. You reminded me that courage exists, that people can still do the right thing even when it's hard. You saved my spirit when I thought it was broken forever." Ali smiled, the same confident grin that had charmed the world for decades, though now tinged with the wisdom that comes from surviving life's greatest challenges. That night, Michael wore Ali's glove during his performance of You Are Not Alone. As he sang the words, "You are not alone, I am here with you," millions of viewers had no idea they were witnessing not just a musical performance, but a testament to the friendship that had helped save both men's spirits during their darkest hours. The glove became Michael's talisman, a physical reminder that he was not fighting his battles alone. The friendship between Muhammad Ali and Michael Jackson continued to deepen over the years that followed. During Michael's 2005 trial, when new allegations surfaced and the media circus began all over again, Ali was one of the few celebrities who attended court proceedings. He sat quietly in the back row, his presence serving as a silent but powerful show of solidarity. Reporters tried to get statements from him, but Ali simply said, "I'm here for my friend." That's what friends do. What the public didn't see were the private gestures of support that continued throughout their friendship. Every year on the anniversary of that CNN interview, Ali would send Michael a simple card with the same message: truth endures. During Michael's most difficult recording sessions, when the pressure of creating new music while dealing with legal battles seemed overwhelming, Ali would sometimes show up unannounced at the studio. He wouldn't say much, just sit in the corner and listen, his presence a reminder that Michael wasn't alone. Michael's band members and producers noticed that Michael's voice was always stronger, his creative energy more focused when Ali was there. It was as if having someone who truly understood his struggle gave Michael permission to be vulnerable in his art again. Ali understood something that few people in Michael's life grasped, that creativity and healing are deeply connected, and that sometimes an artist needs to feel safe before they can feel inspired. When Michael was acquitted on all charges, Ali was among the first to congratulate him. "I told you truth would win," he said simply, embracing Michael outside the courthouse. "It took longer than it should have, but it always does. The important thing is that you never stop believing in yourself." Following Michael's death on June 25, 2009, Ali's statement was characteristically direct and profound. Michael Jackson danced through the pain until the very end. He never let them break his spirit, never stopped loving, never stopped creating. That's not just talent, that's courage. He was a champion in every sense of the word. Ali attended Michael's memorial service at the Staples Center, one of the few celebrities who was there not for the cameras or the publicity, but to say goodbye to a friend who had understood his pain in a way few others could. Years later, when asked about his friendship with Michael Jackson, Ali would reflect, "People always want to know about the famous fights, the championships, the titles. But the thing I'm most proud of is standing up for Michael when the whole world was against him. Because that's what champions do. They protect people who can't protect themselves. Michael protected children his whole life. When he needed protection, I was proud to stand up for him." The story of Muhammad Ali and Michael Jackson reminds us that true courage isn't just about facing physical opponents or performing on the world's biggest stages. Sometimes the greatest courage is shown in the quietest moments: a phone call to someone who's hurting, sitting beside a friend when they're alone, speaking truth when it's unpopular. Two of America's greatest icons found in each other something the world couldn't give them: unconditional friendship and understanding. In the end, both men were vindicated by history. Ali's stand against the Vietnam War is now seen as one of the most principled positions taken by any athlete in American history. Michael's acquittal in 2005 officially cleared his name, and his legacy as an artist and humanitarian continues to inspire millions around the world. But perhaps their greatest victory wasn't in their individual triumphs, but in showing the world what it means to stand together when everything seems to be falling apart. The white sequined glove that Ali gave Michael that night in 1995 was found among Michael's most treasured possessions after his death. Inside the wrist, below Ali's inscription, Michael had added his own message in silver thread: "Thank you for teaching me that champions never fight alone." MJ. It serves as a permanent reminder that even the world's greatest performers and athletes are, at their core, human beings who need friendship, support, and love, especially when the spotlight burns brightest and the pressure threatens to break them. Sometimes the most important battles aren't fought in boxing rings or on concert stages, but in quiet moments between friends who understand that true strength comes not from standing alone, but from knowing someone has your back when the whole world seems to be against you. Their story teaches us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting with love despite that fear. It's making a phone call when you know it might hurt your own reputation. It's speaking truth when silence would be safer. If this story of friendship, courage, and standing up for what's right moved you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because stories like this need to be told and retold until kindness becomes as viral as cruelty. Drop a comment below and tell us about a time when someone stood up for you, when you needed it most, or when you found the courage to stand up for someone else. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that they're not fighting their battles alone. Because sometimes, just like that phone call Allie made to Michael on that August night in 1993, sharing a story can be the beginning of healing, hope, and the reminder that champions really never fight alone.